Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the new sleeper OP or underrated picks so far in patch 7.24. So the first champion we're going to take a look at here is going to be a mid lane pick, and it's going to be Galio. So Galio received some pretty decent buffs in this patch. He received a buff to his W, he received a buff to his E. His passive got a little bit of a nerf, but the buff to his W is what I think is making him a lot stronger in this patch. Now Galio's W actually deals damage in this patch, and it does have a pretty decent AP ratio as well. So it just adds to this champion's full combo. He's going to be able to do a lot more damage with his full combo now, so I think that's why he is performing better in this patch. Now as you can see up on screen here, Galio has seen around an 8% increase in win rate from last patch to this patch. In 7.23 it was sitting at around 42%, hovering around there, and in this patch so far in the first 2 days it's at 50% or is hovering at 50%. So it's not like it's a super OP pick or anything and it's must pick or ban in this patch, but it has gotten a lot stronger here, and I think it is pretty viable now in 7.24. Now for the runes on mid Galio, there's kind of 3 different keystones that are doing pretty well in this patch. You can either run Comet, Airy, or Unsealed Spellbook. Now Comet is the most popular one. It is the one that most people are running, so it would be the just safer option if you don't want to experiment, but Unsealed Spellbook is a pretty interesting one on Galio, mainly because Galio's full burst damage combo kind of does rely on him having his flash up. So by taking that Unsealed Spellbook, you can like run the Ignite eventually, or you can run Exhaust, you can swap out your Summoner spell, but you're also going to have the reduced cooldown on your flash, and therefore your ability to one-shot a target in a mid to late game teamfight is going to be a lot more reliable, and you're going to be able to do it more often. So there's a few different options there with your rune page on Galio. It kind of just does depend on what you're looking to do. So next up here is going to be a champion that I'm definitely happy is coming back into the meta now, or that is at least performing a lot better in the meta, and is Bard. So Bard is a pick to where he wasn't really doing that well at the start of preseason. He was definitely underperforming compared to a lot of the other supports, but in this patch he did receive some buffs. He got a buff to his Meep's damage. It got increased from 30 up to 40, and considering it's only got a 30 base damage and it got increased by 10, that's actually quite a big percentage of damage increase there on his passive. And then he also got another little buff to his base health regen, so it does allow him to just not get poked out as easily now in this patch. So I think that Bard is definitely in a pretty good spot now, and if you're looking to play a strong roaming support in this patch, the early game is just so important. So if you can play Bard correctly, if you can time your roams well and just help your lanes out, then you can definitely succeed very nicely in 7.24 with Bard. And then one thing to note in the rune setup for Bard, Taste of Blood and Zombie Ward is actually what's doing best here in the secondary tree for Bard. A lot of other people are just running the inspiration tree, and they're taking like the pots and they're taking the boots, but Taste of Blood and Zombie Ward is what's doing best, and it does allow for Bard to trade a little bit better in the laning phase. You do have to get into auto attack range to trade with Bard a lot of the time, and therefore you will be able to proc that Taste of Blood quite a lot during the laning phase. And then Zombie Ward is just overall very nice on Bard, because when you're going for your roams into the enemy jungle looking for your meeps, then you will be planting quite a few wards down, and that Zombie Ward just means that the enemy jungle is going to be lit up with vision for a very long time. Next up is going to be the Morgana pick that saw a very big spike in win rate at the start of 7.24. Now keep in mind, this pick did get hot fixed and it's not as strong as it was at the start of the patch. What I would say so far about Morgana is that mid lane Morgana is performing pretty well, and that is where I think she is best in this patch. People are also playing her in the jungle and in the support role. I think support is still pretty good, but I would not really recommend playing her in the jungle, she did get hotfixed, so her sustain is not as strong as it was at the start of the patch. And also, Morgana jungle, it just seems kind of trolled, just because if you're playing up against a strong early game jungler like a Kha'Zix, a Lee Sin, then if they know what they're doing, if they can just pressure you and invade you, you're really not going to be able to do too much in the early game as Morgana. So I think that in the lower elos, it can definitely work alright in the jungle, but once you move up into the ranks, I don't think it is as viable as a pick as a lot of the other junglers. And then as for the rune setup on Morgana mid lane, it's very standard. So you're going to take the Comet, everything else there is very standard, and then take the perfect timing and the cosmic insight in the inspiration tree. So another champion that did receive some pretty decent buffs in 7.24 was Zyra, and this is really helping her out in both the mid lane and in the support role. I think support Zyra is the one that is definitely the better option to play her in. It is the safer role and it's the one that she is most proven in, but mid lane Zyra is definitely pretty interesting in 7.24. She got that buff to her W, which means your W is going to be up a lot of the time. You're almost always going to have a seed, because if you don't know, the buff to her W, whenever you kill a minion, it reduces your W's cooldown by 20%, and when you kill like a cannon minion or a champion, it reduces your seed cooldown by 100%. So this means your poke potential in the laning phase and just in lane now with Zyra is going to be a lot stronger. Your plant damage is going to be quite a lot better in 7.24. So I think this pick is definitely pretty interesting. It will be one to experiment with a little bit in 7.24, and I think that combined with the buff to her W as well as the buff to her E, it does allow for Zyra to have a little bit more reliable wave clear now. You're gonna have your plants up a lot more often, your E got a base damage increase, and then you can also take the minion dematerializer on Zyra if you are playing her mid lane, so it just means she will have a little bit more reliable wave clear now in 7.24. So if we take a look at a top lane pick now, Camille is performing much better in this patch. She got a nice buff to her passive as well as to her Q in this patch, and those buffs are definitely proven to help her out a lot. I think she didn't really need those buffs. I feel like a lot of other bruisers needed buffs more than Camille did, but with that buff and with the fact that Comet is actually really good on Camille, and that's what was making her a lot more viable than these other bruisers, she is definitely a pretty strong pick in 7.24. Now, as for the ability maxing on Camille, it's definitely very interesting, and a lot of different people do different things. What's working best and what has the best win percent is the W max on her. The reason this is pretty good right now is because when you do land your W on the opponent, it guarantees that you're going to proc the Comet as well as the Scorch. So with the W max, it does allow you to do quite a bit of poke damage in the laning phase. You can also go for like a Q max. Some people even go for E max, but it does look like W max is what's performing best on her for 7.24. So next up here is going to be a very interesting pick, and it's one that is very unique here for the preseason. It is Allowi with Kleptomancy and an E-Max. So the reason that this is pretty strong right now is because whenever you hit your E on the opponent, it's going to proc the Kleptomancy every time you auto attack your E. So this means that as long as you can consistently hit that in lane with Allowi, you're going to be getting a ton of Kleptomancy procs off, and it's just going to be very strong on you as long as you can hit that. You're also going to take the sudden impact on her, and then also take the healing one in the domination tree, because combined with Death's Dance and then the healing you get from that domination tree there, it means that in the mid to late game, you're going to be healing a crap ton from your abilities. If you get your ultimate off on like multiple members, then you're going to be very, very hard to kill. So I just think overall, these new runes are super good on Allowi, and she is still very underrated in this patch. And then lastly here, to round out the video, is going to be another top lane pick, and it's going to be Nasus. So Nasus is performing best with a lot of really weird things in this patch. The best keystone on Nasus right now is running the Kleptomancy. Kleptomancy has around like a 4 or 5% better win rate than Grass does on Nasus. I think this is really good on him if you're in that melee matchup and you can just consistently look for harass in the laning phase goes with your Q, if you're not in a matchup to where you're gonna get poked out a lot and you will actually be able to trade, for example, if you're in a tank matchup, like Maokai is very popular right now, so I think that this is the reason as to why Nasus top lane is doing a lot better in this patch. And with Kleptomancy, Nasus and Ornn and just these tankier top laners are seeing a lot more play, and that just means that Nasus is going to get those free Kleptomancy procs off in the laning phase, and he's going to be gaining a ton of gold and a ton of resources. And the build path on Nasus is very interesting. Most people are starting coin now, which I think is pretty common on Nasus top lane, but a lot of people are actually finishing their coin off and they're building that into a Talisman of Ascension. Now this is actually not really troll. When you take a look at the stats for this, it does actually have a better win percent as a first item than Trinity Force does on Nasus. You still want to go Trinity Force second item, but the reason to why I think in theory Talisman would be pretty good on Nasus is because it's just going to mean that you're going to be able to stick onto your target a lot better. They're not really going to be able to kite you at all. So as long as you can proc your Talisman at the correct time in a team fight, for example, if you get slowed or something, or right after you get CC'd, if you can proc your Talisman and just catch up to your opponent, then it will allow him to be a lot more successful inside of team fights. So that is going to be all for this video. These were the picks so far in this patch that are performing quite a lot better, and they're definitely very underrated for how well they're doing so far in 7.24. If you guys did enjoy the video, then please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already. So thanks for watching, have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.